My name is Chrisma Jain, and I have recently joined Network Rail High Speed as Head of Innovation. It's quite a new move for me, so I'm still getting to grips with all the acronyms that everyone uses, so bear with me. And I'm also obviously joined by Liz Turner. Over the next sort of half an hour, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and sorry, it will be a bit of repetition from my intro. A little bit about the theme of the upcoming presidential theme, a little bit about my own experience around professional registration, and then I'll hand over to Liz, who will give us a lot more useful information in terms of the mechanics of how to get professionally registered. So a little bit about me. So mechanical engineer by background. I started my railway career back in 2004, where I joined Balfours on their graduate scheme. I started off as a site engineer, and then worked up to a construction manager. One of the things that I really enjoyed about all of my roles at Balfours is delivering the track renewals that were kind of very close to home. So it meant that I could ride the train pre the weekend and post the weekend. And for me, it was really rewarding knowing that I had planned that project, and getting the difference of the ride quality for me was really good. I then moved to TfL. I must quantify though, the work that I did at Balfours was also on TfL infrastructure, but I then moved directly to TfL. Did various roles, but mostly around project management, again delivering track and signal projects. One of the projects that I did before I left TfL was removing obsolescence on the central line signalling system, and that was quite interesting. And as I've just said, more recently, I have moved to Network Rail High Speed. And again, I am learning about how much of a bubble Network Rail High Speed is compared to the rest of Network Rail. Alongside my day role, for the last few years, I've always had a volunteer role. So I have been a trustee for the Women's Engineering Society, and I've also sat on the council. I must qualify, I don't do those roles anymore. I think it was, you come to the end of a term, and I felt that there was just too much work for me to do. So I'm trying to be selective about the roles that I do. I've also just had a baby, so trying to manage my time. All of those volunteer roles have kind of led me to become the role here today as PWI president. So I will be the incoming president from July, and I'm excited and a little bit nervous about it too. So moving on, I think these slides, bit of a shuffle in the slides. So every year, a president gets to choose a theme about what they want to promote for the year. And I have chosen innovation, change in the future generation. And I think, based on what we've heard today, it seems and feels very topical in terms of change and innovation. Although I work at HS1 now, where the infrastructure is relatively new, most of my career has been spent at TfL, where the infrastructure is very old, and renewing that infrastructure can sometimes be difficult. And as we've heard through today, we are in a world where the challenges that we face is growing. So we work on an ageing infrastructure. We've got less cash to use. We've got less resources. We've got less people. Yet the amount of trains that we're running is the same, and the amount of work that we do is still needs to be delivered. So these growing challenges does require change and innovation, and we've heard today some of those things that where we are creating change and we are creating innovation. Innovation just isn't about technology, though. It can be as simple as just changing the way we do things and changing the process. And most importantly, we can create change, but the most important thing for me is us as people and the culture that we create to allow that change to happen. At HS1, where I am the head of innovation, and I'm beginning to learn that one of the challenges for us as an organisation is, as it's a relatively new organisation, they've not had to do many large-scale renewals up until, so in the next sort of 5 years, the ballast is becoming it will need a midlife renewal. And therefore, at the minute, all of the white periods at the moment is spent doing routine maintenance planning. So the challenge that we have in the next 5 years is how do we change the way we plan maintenance to allow us to deliver that large scale of renewals. And some of the things that we are looking at is that the whole automated inspection piece, the remote condition monitoring, to allow us to kind of change the way we deliver maintenance. And the other thing that I don't think we should forget is the skills gap. So I don't know if anyone has tried to fill vacancies recently, but in my previous role, where we've tried to run a campaign and fill vacancies, it's actually quite difficult to fill lots of vacancies all in one go. So not being able to fill vacancies is a challenge that we all have to face. And if we're not getting as many people coming into the industry, this challenge is just growing. So when I was at school, the railway career wasn't really talked about. So I knew I wanted to be an engineer. Automotive engineering was spoken about, motorsports. There was lots of different various branches of engineering, but no one really touted the railways to me. I actually just fell into this industry, and I'm pleased that I did. I've been here ever since. But I do think it's up to us as a community to promote the railways. So my understanding is, and I'm still new to Network Rail, so I've only been here for a couple of months, but we all get 5 volunteer days. So if you do get an opportunity to go to a school and promote railways, I'm sure the kids would love to hear from you. So now let's move on to professional registration. And I will go back a slide. So there's 3 questions up on the screen, and I wouldn't get bogged down with the numbers or anything. It's just kind of a bit of an icebreaker to kind of get us thinking about professional registration. So I'm going to get you all to put your hands up because everyone's been, I'll stick with the theme. How many people do you think have been professionally registered since May 2024? Now, this question is around people who belong to Network Rail and are also members of the PWI. So don't forget, there's obviously people that are getting professionally registered that may belong to other institutions such as the ICE or IET. So this is purely around PWI. How many people do you think have been professionally registered within the last year? So the answers are, or the options are, 26, 38, 54, 111. I'll take it a little bit slower, and if you think it's that number, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand. So if you think it's 26, raise your hand. So there's a few hands there. 38, a few more, and 54. I think the majority was, sorry, and 111. Forgot the last one. There's not so many with 111. So there was quite an even spread over 26, 38, 54, but I think the majority of you put your hands up for 38. The actual answer is 54, but the previous year, I think we've actually almost doubled the number of people that have been professionally registered, so that's a really good kind of upward trend. The second question, what percentage of people who gained professional registration? So of this 54 people that we've just highlighted, how many of them do you think are female by percentage? The answers, or the options are 3, 5, 8, or 11. So we'll do the same again. So if you think it's 3%, raise your hand. There's a few hands. If you think it's 5%, there's a few more. 8, 11. So I think the majority of the hands went up for 5, and you are actually correct. So 5% is the correct answer. I think 8% is the PWI average. So we're not far away. And then the final question is, what percentage of people who gained professional registration are from a maintenance team? So again, of that 54 people, how many of them do you think are from a maintenance team? So again, same process. So if you think it's 10%, a few hands there, 16%, 23, and 33. I think there's a fairly even spread on the first three, and then not so many on the last one. The actual answer is 33%, so a really large percentage. So well done, everyone. So again, let's not get bogged down in the numbers. It was just to get us thinking about professional registration. And I'm just going to move on just to give you a little bit of insight into my own experience around professional registration. So I joined the railway back in 2004, and it was probably on my objectives ever since I joined the railway. I didn't really do too much with it. It probably stayed on my objectives for quite some time. I was quite good at kind of keeping a loose diary in terms of the projects that I'd worked on, but in terms of competencies and checking the levels, I didn't really do that in any great detail. I felt like I was unlucky with mentors. I promise I didn't do anything to them, but one of them moved countries, one of them changed jobs, one of them became seriously ill, and I lost touch with another one. And all of that stop-start made me kind of lose interest, but at the same time, I was also working weekends, and I was also, in the early part of my career, I was doing a rotation of nights, and all of that just meant anytime I did have some free time, the last thing I wanted to do was put my application together. So it took me a while. So I think what finally gave me that push was that I was looking at job adverts, as you do, and it became quite a common theme to be professionally registered. It was a common theme on some of those adverts. So I thought I would try again, and I did things a little bit differently. So I got a new mentor who I had a better relationship with, and I used some of my work time on a Friday afternoon when generally things were a bit quieter, unless we had a job on at the weekend. And I finally became chartered in 2020. So it took me a long while, and I guess all I wanted to say was it's never too late to become chartered. I was chatting to Mark, who I gave the certificate to earlier on, just before lunch, and I think he's got a really amazing story. So he has become chartered and did a degree almost 20 years into his career. I think that actually is much harder than doing it straight off. So well done, Mark. And it's never too late to get professionally registered. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Liz, who's going to give us a lot more useful information.
So hello everyone, Liz Turner, Registration Manager at the PWI, as you heard earlier on. Just as another show of hands, could I ask those who are a member of the PWI to put your hand up? So that is most of you by the looks. That's really great. So hopefully you know everything about us as an organisation already then. But just as a bit of a recap, we were established back in 1884 as a learned society, and you can see there our objectives and our aims, and they remain true today. You know, we're here to advance knowledge and understanding and to ensure competency. But the real big kind of change that happened with us as an institution was back in 2019 when we got our licence from the Engineering Council to be able to award our members with the professional, like globally recognised professional titles of engineering technician, incorporated engineer and chartered engineer. Hopefully those terms at least are familiar with you and to you. And so since 2019, we've done it 500 times, where we've been able to celebrate and congratulate and confer on our members one of those professional titles. And you can see there the split by title, and the light blue section is the EngTechs, and then moving round to a smaller chunk of incorporated engineers, and the dark blue is your chartered engineers. And that's exactly the kind of support structure that we think is right in the industry, that we have that real heavy base of engineering technicians moving up to the kind of leaders of industry at chartered engineer. So we'd like a bit more of a spread at iEng perhaps, but certainly that heavy base at EngTech is great. And what we also see is that those that start with EngTech can then really use that as a platform to then progress on to some of the other titles as well, and take it as a journey through, which is really encouraging. Some of those 500 are additional members with us, so where they've actually obtained their title with a different institution, ICE, IMechE, and have then come to the PWI to also be recognised at that same level as a chartered engineer or an EngTech within the railway industry. And so they're holding that title with 2 institutions. You can transfer, so you don't have to keep hold with your original institution. You could transfer to the PWI, or you can retain the both. But it's all about being recognised as a competent railway professional as well. A much simpler application though, because you've already done the hard work once. It's just about putting that experience within the railway context. So what is professional registration? Well, it's the assessment of your competence and commitment as a professional engineer. And that assessment is done by peers, ultimately. It's a peer assessment, and they're confirming that you've got all of those qualities and that knowledge and understanding that's required by the standard set by the Engineering Council. And all professional institutions, mentioned a couple already, we all work to that same standard that the Engineering Council have set, the Bible, if you like, that we all have to assess against. And that's UK spec, A1 through to E5, and we're all looking at that and assessing against that same way. So to look a little bit more about the different titles, as I say, there's the engineering technician, incorporated engineer, and chartered engineer. And you've got there the definitions that the Engineering Council give to each of those 3 titles. And sometimes people can be a bit unsure about where they might sit within this kind of ladder of titles. And one of the things that can be quite helpful, I think, is to kind of replace the title with I. So EngTechs apply proven techniques. Well, do I do that? Do I apply proven techniques and procedures and solve practical engineering problems? Or do I solve complex problems with real innovation and creativity? And then you might be more at that chartered engineer level. So they're the 3 titles, and they do kind of broaden and deepen as you progress up that ladder. For each of the titles, there's 2 elements, the academic competencies and the professional competencies. And this, I think, can be where it can get a little bit complicated, but I'll try my best to explain them. So at EngTech, you've got to be a level 3 academic competence. But the beauty with EngTech is that it's an integrated assessment of both of these elements of academic and professional competence. So you can do one application and satisfy both elements. At iEng and CEng, you have to have met the academic competencies before you can move on to professional review. And at iEng, that's typically bachelor level learning, and at CEng, typically master's level learning. And I really want to draw your attention to the word typically, because if you've been to university, great, but if you've not, then don't switch off, because what you can do instead is use all of your career experiences to show that you've acquired that equivalent knowledge and understanding as would have been taught to you at university, and you can demonstrate that you've got that through one of our routes to registration. So once the academic competencies are ticked off and boxed off, then there's the professional competencies. And you can see there, that's UK spec, the A1 to E5 that I mentioned, 5 broad categories, and they remain the same across the titles. So yes, they broaden and deepen slightly. There a bit more is required. You know, it's leadership at CEng, management at iEng, but at the core, they're the same 5 core areas. And so A is all about what you know. B is how you've applied that knowledge. C is about your responsibility and your management, whether that's for people or projects or quality improvements. D, your communication skills. And then E is the one that I like to think of as the kind of DNA of a professional engineer, that golden thread that runs through all of you, where it really focuses on your commitment to safety and sustainability and working ethically. So as I say, the typically word is really important, because if you haven't got a master's, whether that be an MEng, like a 4-year full-time degree, or an MSc, there are all these routes that are available to you. And Yes, you can go back to university, and I know that Network Rail support a number of degree apprenticeships, whether that be level 6 or level 7, and they are fantastic opportunities to come out with both things, to come out with your degree as well as then a professional qualification, because they're designed in that way that the knowledge, skills and behaviours are mapped across to UK spec, and so you can kind of kill two birds with one stone when you get to the end of that. Or you can go and do part-time MSCs, those sorts of things. But if that's not your bag, you're all really busy TMEs, I know, and you're probably thinking no chance. Well, there are then these routes to registration that the PWI have developed, where you can use your experiences instead, as I say, to show that you've got the equivalent knowledge and understanding. And which route you're eligible for depends on any kind of other qualifications that you might have already obtained. And the one thing that I really want to stress is that you are unique. You know, we all are as individuals, and your career history and your qualifications will all be unique to you. And so what you need to do is to get the kind of unique information that's very specific to you as well. So get in touch with us. Tell us what qualifications you have got, what level of experience you've got. You know, that's just your copies of your certificates and a CV, nothing more complicated than that. And we can then tell you what you're eligible for and where you can start your journey. And that piece of information is your nugget, really, because that's where you can start. And you know then that you're going off in the right direction. And that information won't change. Your qualifications don't deteriorate in any way. So it's only if we develop some new routes to registration that it might become slightly different. But once you at least know where to start, then you've got that information. And that, as I say, that won't change. And that's the real nugget that I would give to any of you that are thinking about going forward with this, is to get that kind of very personalised information and advice about where you can start for iEng and CEng. Eng Tech, everyone can apply. So what do you need to do in order to become a registrant? So you need to be a member, but happily, all of you have ticked off that box pretty much already, so that's fantastic. You need a supporter who is someone who knows you well in the workplace, so that's typically your line manager, and most people are able to get their supporter in place. You also need a sponsor, and that's somebody who's already a registrant with any engineering council licensee. And they are signing off to confirm that they would recommend you for election, that they think you've got those qualities and the experiences required of a professional engineer. You do need CPD records. At Eng Tech, that's the past 12 months. At iEng and CEng, that's the past 3 years. Again, if you're thinking, well, I can't make a start on this then because I haven't got up-to-date records, you can create them retrospectively, because all of you will do CPD routinely as part of your job. It doesn't have to be any kind of extracurricular stuff that you go off to do, or your line manager sending you on a 5-day course. Yes, that is a great example of CPD, but it doesn't have to be the stuff that takes you away from the day job. There'll be loads of elements of it. And you can just go back through your work diary and find out what there might be to create those records retrospectively. As I say, at iEng and CEng, you need to have that academic check made, get that personalised advice, and that might mean that you need to dig out your certificates. They may be ancient in your mind, but they'll still be highly relevant, and so do head up into the loft or get back to your parents and dig out those certificates so that you can have that assessment made. Just going to dwell a little bit on the role of the sponsor, which I mentioned there, because I know some of you, we've congratulated you today, and there are others as well that are already registrants. And so your role obviously isn't now about applying this yourself, but helping others. One of the commitments that you make as a professional engineer is to support the development of others, and being a sponsor is a fantastic way of doing that. And you can do that whether you've got Eng Tech, iEng or CEng. So if you're an Eng Tech registrant, you can sponsor somebody going for Eng Tech. And it's a critical role. Every applicant needs a sponsor. And so you could be that person that doesn't run away like Chrisma did to various different places, but can work alongside that colleague to really try and support their own development. And you as a sponsor are the first quality assurance gateway for any application. As I say, essentially your sponsor is signing off recommending that candidate is suitable to be elected, that they've got that commitment and that knowledge. And so it's a really important role, a really valuable role, and you can see their reasons as to why you might do it, who can do it, and that's any active registrant. And you don't necessarily need to know the person well, you just need to know their area of work. So, you can look out and see who might want some support and be able to advise and guide them. And then you sign off, essentially, make the declarations that they're suitable for election, and you verify some certificates. But really the role is much more in the one-to-one conversations than preparing the application than on the application itself. So EngTech, as I say, that's that integrated assessment of academic and professional competencies. So it's a straightforward application form that you can download from our website and essentially fill in the boxes. There's some details about you, your qualifications, your career experiences, and then a few hundred words typically for each of the UK spec professional competencies, that A1 through to E5. Supporting evidence, if you've got it available, is really useful for the reviewers because they only know what you write and what you provide. They don't know you personally. If they do, they declare it and say, I can't assess this one. You need your development plan, so the objectives that you want to try and achieve in the next 12 months typically, but it's great to look beyond that for kind of 3, 5, 10 years where you might want to be and how you might want to develop, and your CPD records. And once you've got all of that together, then it's submitted and we aim to give you a decision within 6 weeks. So it's quite a quick turnaround process. There's no interview that's required at EngTech. As I say, it's done in correspondence. 2 assessors look at it, those peers that are performing that assessment, and then you get that decision. Sometimes they might want a bit more information from you, but hopefully they'll be recommending your election, and that decision's then taken by our membership committee. At iEng and CEng, it's a different process in as much as the Engineering Council state that there has to be an interview, your professional review interview that takes place. If you're doing a degree apprenticeship, this is where it can be combined with your endpoint assessment. But we're then looking at those, really picking through the report that you've written of your career experiences that demonstrate those professional competencies, and asking those questions of you. Once the reviewers are recommended that, yeah, you've satisfied what's required there, then again, that goes to the membership committee to take the decision. Goes through a scrutineering process first to make sure that there is sufficient evidence there to enable you to progress to an interview. And that might be a case where they come back and ask for some further information from you, but hopefully you get the green light to proceed. And we hold our interviews quarterly, so there are some kind of useful milestones that you can start to set your progress against, and you can work backwards from when you might want to aim for an interview and when a submission deadline might be, and then when you can start to plug in some meetings with your sponsor and things like that. So that probably all sounds like a lot of effort, and why might you bother? Well, there are certainly benefits to industry and to society by having a professionalised railway industry, railway engineering industry. Society can have confidence in you, in the trains that they travel on. There are certainly benefits to employers who are having a professionalised workforce, and the team that you're then working within, where you're all then committed to your own development and the development of others. It helps with recruitment and retention. But ultimately, it's the benefit to you as an individual, because this is an individual qualification that once you have earned through your career experiences and your hard graft in preparing your application, no one can take away from you. You make a commitment to maintain your membership and to maintain your development, and that's as much as your kind of ongoing commitment is. And you get the benefits then that this kind of globally recognised professional qualification gives you. It can open doors to other opportunities, it can open doors to career progression. As Chrisma said, certainly more and more job applications start to have it as, if not essential, desirable quality that's required. and you become instantly recognised by having these letters after your name. It's a protected title. Anyone can call themselves an engineer, but only you can call yourself a chartered engineer or an incorporated engineer. That's what really stands you apart from all the other engineers that you might work with, that you've had your competence and your commitment assessed in that way, and that you can have those letters after your name. I think that's the end. So what I was just going to dwell on, because I know what I hear routinely, and particularly from the track maintenance community, is that you haven't got the time because it's such a busy role, and I truly appreciate all of that and the responsibilities that you all have in your role to keep trains running, and all of that sort of stuff. And so I would just encourage you, if you're wanting to make a personal application, to just get for iEng and CEng, get that check made, because as I say, that advice you're given about the route that you might need to take won't date. So find out now what that route needs to be. It's a really simple form to fill in, and then CVs and certificates, and we can get that decision to you. That doesn't need to take you very long at all. So get that information, get that advice. Start to look at your CPD. If you're thinking, actually, this isn't going to happen for any time soon for me to make an application, well, at least start to create that habit of regularly logging your CPD so that you've got that record there ready and you don't have to be creating it retrospectively in 3 years' time. And the other thing that I'd just encourage is that you actually start to become familiar with UK Spec. Start to understand the exam question, and then you can start to think through, just in the background, about how you're going to answer it, and start to think about the career experiences and the examples that you've got, or start to identify gaps and opportunities that you might want to look for so that you're going to have those examples to talk about. So yeah, there are some top tips to how to get started when I know that you are also time poor. Hopefully that's been helpful.